Aloha, I'm Governor David Ige. Welcome to this week's edition of Capital Connection on Facebook Live. This is our opportunity to engage you, the public, in those issues of your interest. On today's program, we have Scott Glenn, who's the Director of the Office of Environmental Quality Control. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Governor. Aloha.
Aloha. Today we have a very special program where we're going to be hearing student voices. And Scott, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Thank you. Recently we went to Germany for the Global Climate Change Conference. And coming back from that, Kamehameha School's middle school invited me to come speak to the students about Hawaii's role in our global effort to protect our environment and fight climate change. When I went to see the students, they also presented me with a set of letters addressed to you, Governor. And in these letters, the students they identified some environmental concerns that they have, and then also proposed some solutions to them. And so today I thought it might be good, Governor, if we went through some of the issues that they raised and you share your thoughts on them.
Certainly. Thank you.
Okay, so what I did was I reviewed the letters, and then we grouped them into the different topics that roughly match up with the Sustainable Hawaii Initiative. So the first set of letters, there's a couple here from students Jamie, Keiki D, and Keiki F, and they talked about their concerns about global warming, and they have some suggestions for improving it. But Governor, would you be willing to share your thoughts on what we're doing about clean energy and here in Hawaii?
Sure. Thank you, Jamie, Keiki, and Keiki. You know, we here in Hawaii can be proud of our commitment to in the fight against global warming. As you may know, Hawaii is the first and only state at this point in time who've committed to a complete transformation of how we generate our electricity. You know, Hawaii embraced 100% clean renewable energy for electricity generation. We are still the first and only state that have committed to that. As you know, Scott, I was up at the U.S. Climate Alliance meeting in New York, talking with Governors Brown, Governors Inslee, Governors Bullock, to really talk about how it's important that the United States be at the forefront of the battle against climate change. And as that, governors committed to and agreed to step forward. As you know, President Trump has really said that he would not comply with the elements of the Paris Agreement. So, you know, I'm proud to be governor of the state of Hawaii. We are working on a number of things besides the electricity challenge. We do know that in and of themselves would significantly reduce the greenhouse gases that Hawaii emits, as more of our electricity is generated by solar, biomass, and biofuels. We know that we are significantly reducing our greenhouse gases. And we also have been talking about electrification of our transportation. You know, Hawaii has the highest penetration in the country for electric vehicles here in the islands. And we know that electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, are all zero emission vehicles. They emit no greenhouse gases. So we know that as we make progress on electricity and clean renewable energy for electricity and cleaner vehicles, will make a significant reduction in our greenhouse gases.
Okay, great. Thank you, Governor.
Yeah, thanks.
Another topic that students have written about, and particularly this one from Jody Ann, had some concerns about food security and for what we can do to improve our food security and reduce food shortages in the islands. So here's a letter from her. And Governor, if maybe you could talk a little bit about what we're doing for food security.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jody Ann, for your letter. You know, food security is a huge challenge, not only here in Hawaii, but really around the United States and around the world. You know, as part of our Sustainable Hawaii Initiative, I really have committed to the goal of doubling food production here in the state of Hawaii I think it's so important that if we can be more sustainable, if we can produce more of the food that we eat, then we would stop importing food and other products and create jobs right here in our economy. We do know that food and food security is a big part of that, and we need to build the infrastructure that allows us to support our farmers in complying with the new federal food security requirements. We know that as we transition and produce more of the food that we eat, being able to assure our community that the food is healthy and safe and clean will make a big impact on allowing our community to eat healthier and better food all year round.
Great. Okay, thank you. So we also know that our islands depend a lot on our watershed, and so some students have written in, including Akamu has written in about concerns about consumption and waste, but she wants to make sure that we take care of our watershed and reduce water pollution. And so could you talk a little bit about our watersheds and what we're doing for those?
Certainly. As you are aware, Scott, part of the Sustainable Hawaii initiative really is focused on protecting the most important watersheds all across the state. We know that clean water begins in our native forest, and our commitment is to protect 30% of the key watersheds throughout the state. We know that if we can protect 30% of the watersheds, then we would assure access to clean, fresh water pretty much for the rest of time. So, we have made an effort. We've appropriated funds to fence the watersheds and make sure that we can keep ungulates and other animals out of the watersheds. We have made a commitment of protecting $5 million appropriation to protect the most important watersheds in our community. And we are actually working to get private sector partners in our effort. We do know that public-private partnerships, especially for protecting our watersheds, is a great opportunity to get private sector organizations to participate with us. So, we continue to look for opportunities to work together. Coca-Cola had committed $200,000 to protect the Ko'olau Mountains Watershed Partnership by constructing more than 6-mile-long fence in the Waiawa rainforest. And it's those kinds of efforts that will help us attain our goal of 30%.
Right. And those along those lines, right, putting that kind of fencing in will help us keep invasive species out, which allows our native plants to grow. Josiah wrote in a letter about climate change, and I know you talked about clean energy a little bit, but could you also talk about it from the climate change point of view?
Sure.
A little bit about what we're doing.
Thanks, Josiah. Yes, climate change is real, and as an island community, I know that we see the impact of climate change and global warming in a much, much greater way than other communities would. We have seen more extreme tide events. We've had a couple of time periods where we've had extreme tides. We know that we've had greater shoreline erosion all across the state. We've had more coral bleaching events and coral reefs dying because of the increase in the ocean temperature as well as acidity. And so we definitely see that impact. As you know, we became the first state to agree to comply with the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. And Scott, you might want to talk a little bit about our participation in the U.S. Climate Alliance, which is really the governor's efforts to really stand up and be counted in the battle to reduce climate change and global warming.
Sure, happy to. The U.S. Climate Alliance, Governor Ige joined it in June of last year, and so this came along with the signing of the Paris Agreement. And so Governor Ige, Governor Inslee of Washington, Governor Brown of California, and Governor Cuomo of New York, those three helped set up as co-chairs, and then Governor Ige and others, we all came together to collaborate on what we can do at the state level, because the federal government has decided to basically give up on leadership for climate change. So we are all working together to figure out how can we as states coordinate our policy, coordinate research, and team up to deal with our common challenges. So, Governor, thanks for letting me work on that. And
certainly, I think it's a very, very important part of what we do here in the state of Hawaii. As you know, our Department of Land and Natural Resources is working to manage the watersheds all the way down to the ocean, because we do know that we need to protect our critical environments for the benefit of native species, and I think more importantly, to assure that we have access to clean water.
And Governor, you just mentioned native species. There's several students who wrote in letters about biosecurity.
Okay.
So, native species are under threat from invasive species. So Siana, Kaiulani, Aloha-Laini, Keiki, and Haley, and many other students wrote in expressing some concern about how do we prevent invasive species from coming in and to protect our indigenous species. So here's some letters from them, and if you could share your thoughts on what we're doing for that.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to welcome Keoma to the conversation today, and would want to invite people who are watching to go ahead and submit comments online. Just a reminder, this is Capital Connection on Facebook Live. We're live here from the governor's office. It's a beautiful day out, and I just wanted to thank Siana, Kaiulani, Aloha, Ailani, Keiki, and Haley for your questions. Biosecurity is such an important part here in Hawaii, and we know that Hawaii is home to the most endangered species on the planet. And what happens in our environment critically impacts other parts of our natural environment. So we became the first state to issue an interagency biosecurity plan. It really was looking at the state of Hawaii and thinking about how we could keep invasive species out. So how do we, as we import food and other items, how do we make sure that none of those imports carry with them invasive species that could really wreak havoc in our environment? And then the other half of that biosecurity plan focused on how do we, if an invasive species is introduced into our community, how do we identify that that's occurred, and then most importantly, take quick action to eliminate or eradicate the invasive species. We know what had happened with the coqui frogs, when first introduced. We weren't so aware that they were introduced into our environment.
Until we started hearing them.
Yes, and we started hearing them and hearing them and hearing them, especially on the Big Island. And certainly, so I think we are a lot more aware. Part of that biosecurity plan is really focused on, being smart about what we do. We do know that the importation of goods really is the one point where the invasive species are introduced. So it really is working on our harbors with the airline industry to make sure that we can ensure that the ships and the aircraft that come to our islands are free of invasive species. The other part of that really is about the invasive species council and taking action to eradicate and eliminate.
Yes, and then in particular, rapid ohia death is
Yes.
something that's been a big concern for our indigenous plants that we want to protect and promote. So Sean wrote in a letter expressing some concerns about rapid ohia death, and I know it's a big problem on Big Island, and we're trying to do a lot. So could you share what we're doing about that?
Certainly, we are still trying to understand how this fungus got introduced into our ohia forest. We do know that they are in selected ohia forest on the Big Island, and they are growing, they are spreading. We have I just released $1.2 million really to help in the fight against rapid ohia death. And we are trying to apply different techniques and technology to really help us win the battle against rapid ohia death. I did want to thank all of the cultural practitioners for their participation and help. I do know that they go into the native forest to collect different herbs and plants and flowers as part of their cultural practice. And they've been excellent stewards, really going above board to ensure that as part of their exercise of their culture, that they are not helping to spread the virus. We are focused on a couple different things that we think will help us tremendously in the fight against rapid ohia death. First and foremost is just information. We do want to more consistently survey the forest so we know where the virus, the fungus is, and how quickly it's spreading. We want to make sure that maybe using drone technology and various sensing technology, we can more rapidly survey the forest, so we can keep track of where the fungus is and how quickly it's spreading. We do have and have invested through the University of Hawaii in experts in this disease and really trying to understand how it is being spread throughout our forest. And more importantly, try and help us understand what kinds of strategies and tactics might be most successful in stopping the disease from spreading more and hopefully get to the point that we can actually eradicate the diseased trend.
Right. Okay, thank you. And Governor, so we talked a little bit about clean energy, climate change, and we've been talking about trees a little bit. So McKenna's written in some concern about greenhouse gases. And what are we doing about greenhouse gas problems? And what can we do to help reduce our greenhouse gas emissions? So here's a letter from McKenna about that.
Well, thank you, McKenna. I just wanted to thank you for sending in this letter. I wanted to welcome Becky to the program and thank you for tuning in. We do know that greenhouse gases is the primary cause of global warming and climate change. And we are doing everything we can here in Hawaii to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases we emit. Our 100% commitment to clean renewable energy for electricity is a big part of our reducing greenhouse gases. We estimate that we burn fossil fuel about $2 billion worth, which is millions of gallons, to produce electricity. Wow. As we increase the use of solar and wind power and other clean renewable energies, we automatically will be significantly reducing the greenhouse gases that are created. And as you know, Scott, one of the first things when I became governor is I really took a position against liquefied natural gas to generate electricity. I felt that we really should focus our efforts on clean renewable energy rather than get diverted into introducing another fossil fuel for electricity. And that I felt was a better investment on behalf of all the people of Hawaii. And I do think that a big part of our efforts will deal with carbon capture. And Scott, maybe you can talk a little bit about, I know that that's been a topic of the U.S. Climate Alliance, and our efforts to think about how we might be able to get polluters to invest in projects here in the state that captures carbon and eliminates greenhouse gases.
Yes, so Governor, with working with California and the other states, we've been trying to help set up a carbon capture system that would pull the carbon out of the atmosphere and be put into our trees. And so there's people around the world who have greenhouse gas emissions, and they are trying to find places that they can pay to offset their emissions. And right now in Hawaii, we don't have anything set up for them to do that, where they can help pay someone in Hawaii to plant trees to pull carbon out of the atmosphere. And DLNR has 2 projects going. They have one on Big Island, on Hawaii Island, on Mauna Loa, I think. And they have a second one on Maui at Haleakala, where they're trying to do that. They're trying to set up some forest replanting projects that would help pull carbon out of the atmosphere and then generate some revenue to help keep doing that. So it becomes a positive feedback loop to help us protect the environment and do our part in our kuleana to help care for the global environmental challenges.
Certainly, and I've had conversations with U.S. and international airlines. You know, they definitely know that their core business right now and for the foreseeable future is based on fossil fuel and burning fossil fuel, but they want to be part of the long-term solution. So I know that they've expressed interest once we get the program up and running to be able to invest in those carbon capture projects because they want to be contributing and good corporate citizens, and they are more than willing to make those kinds of investments in forest reforestation or creating more native forest here in Hawaii that can capture more carbon.
Thank you. Governor, up until now, we've mainly been talking about kind of land-based challenges to the environment, but if we could shift our focus now towards the ocean, many students have written in about concerns for ocean-related challenges. And in particular, here's a couple letters from Jonah, Zoe, Nance, and many more, talking about concerns of overfishing, that we need to prepare and steward our valuable food resources in the ocean. And could you talk a little bit about what we're doing on that?
Sure. Thank you so much for sending in the letter. We do know part of the Sustainable Hawaii Initiative really includes managing 30% of our ocean resources. Again, you know, the theory from the scientists is that if we could manage well 30% of our ocean resources, that would allow regeneration of coral reefs and of fish and other biota in the ocean that would allow our entire ocean to thrive. So we've been very active and proactive in a number of different ocean management strategies that we believe helps move forward in this area. We know that the peoples of the First Nation of Hawaii was a completely sustainable community. You know, we estimate that the population in Hawaii exceeded 1 million people. We know that they grew all of the food that they eat, and we know that oceans and fish ponds along the shore were really a part of that system of producing all the food that they need to eat. So we've done a couple things. You know, at the Department of Land and Natural Resources, we've totally streamlined the permitting process that would allow community groups who want to restore traditional fish ponds along the ocean. You know, they have been many efforts to try to do this, and they've all bogged down with all of the new federal environmental laws and requirements. And this new streamlined process really allows us to fast track review, make sure that those organizations are really restoring in the traditional sense. And hopefully this will allow us to restore many fish ponds along the shorelines. We do know that as we restore these fish ponds, it would allow us to produce fish like local food that can help us.
Right.
And it takes away so much, or part of that is the overfishing question that the students asked about. If we can produce more fish through our fish ponds, then we wouldn't have to take so much fish out of the other protected areas. Now, a couple of other things that we've been working on, I think that are fundamentally important. We do know that traditional and customary practices of Native Hawaiians have been effective. And so we are engaging community management of the ocean resource. Haiena on the North Shore of Kauai was the first community to get organized and say, we want to be part of the solution. We want to be able to help manage the ocean resource in a traditional way. And so they put together the rules that they would like to manage that ocean resource through. And it's been effective. We think that it's a model for other areas. We know that we need a variety of ways for us to manage the ocean. The traditional practices in Haiena, I think, is one way. We know that we want to create protected areas where we don't allow any fishing, so that the reefs can be restored and thrive, and the fish life in that area can reproduce and expand. And then we do want to manage in other areas. We might have seasons where we would allow for catching of fish. We want to...
Like a temporary kapu.
Right, a temporary kapu, or other ways that we would allow some fishing during periods of time, but not others. And really, it's really understanding the natural cycles of those ocean areas, understanding the spawning times for different species of fish, understanding, at when in their life cycle the fish are most productive, and avoiding catching fish during those period of times, setting catch limits and others. It really is about managing, understanding and getting data about the fish and the resource, and then managing to reduce the taking of fish, and ensuring that we have protected areas where fish will be allowed to be, or will not allowed to be caught, so that we can regenerate the fish stock.
Okay. And so I have one last topic from the students, and I think by far most of the students had some concerns about this, which is the marine debris and beach cleanups and plastic on the beach and tsunami debris. Jarrett, Alana, Jules, Tarina, Haley, Cody, many students wrote in concerns about this and their ideas for ways to reduce marine debris and help clean it up better and be better stewards of our beaches. So here's a big chunk of letters.
Thank you. Boy, I guess there are lots of students who are concerned about fish debris. Well, that there are a number of things that we've done here to try to reduce the amount of trash and rubbish that get into the oceans. Most counties have now banned plastic bags, one-time use plastic bags, and I hope many of you are taking your reusable shopping bags. I do have them in the car, so when I go shopping, I usually forget if it's not in the car, and so
me too.
And I see more when I go shopping. I do see more and more people with their reusable shopping bags. So I think that that's an important part of that. There've been bills introduced in the legislature to limit styrofoam containers for different kinds of products. There's been increased effort and legislation that requires biodegradable containers rather than plastic containers that really wreak havoc. I do know that Department of Land and Natural Resources have been involved with the Coast Guard. Mm-hmm. There've been debris fields that float around the ocean of plastic trash that accumulates together, and we've been out trying to remove those debris fields. Some of them can be very enormous, and it's kind of a constant effort. But really, reducing ocean debris is really something that we all have to be committed to doing. There are now biodegradable fishing nets and other things, so that in the event that nets are lost at sea, it wouldn't become a biohazard like it does today. Mm-hmm. Many of the nets are virtually indestructible.
Right.
And having some process so that the nets are biodegradable would all contribute to a reduction of mm-hmm. the ocean debris.
Mm-hmm. And if I may add, Governor, there's a lot of communities that come together to do beach cleanups.
Yes.
And while it's a shame that we have so much marine debris that we have to do these cleanups, I think one of the unintended or silver linings of it is that the community is coming together, spending time together to care for our environment together, and really help build a stewardship ethic amongst people to care for these beaches and areas.
And certainly when I go running at the beach and I do see these cleanup organizations just really getting organized to clean beach areas up, it is really inspiring to me. In many instances, it is students and mm-hmm. young groups, and definitely I think most of us are not aware at how much trash gets into the ocean. Mm-hmm. And when you see all of the debris collected in a relatively short period of time along the oceans, it gives you a better appreciation for how much trash there is. And I think it gives you a better appreciation for why limiting plastic and other kinds of things that live in the ocean for a long, long time is really good public policy and an important part of us taking action on this.
Okay. So Governor, one last thought. There were actually a few students who came to your State of the State. And so I wrote down their names here for you, and they were some of the letters that you saw. And so they really enjoyed your speech, and were excited to hear about the Kamehameha School's connection with the renewable energy and some of the other things you mentioned.
Well, I just wanted to thank Auntie Z for getting her students so inspired to write to me. And I just wanted to thank Sean and Alana, Adriana, Jonah, and Jarrett for your commitment and interest and coming to the state capitol for my State of the State speech. I think I'm so proud to be governor of the state of Hawaii because we get it. Climate change is real. We understand how important our natural resources are. And we are committed collectively as a community to keep our oceans, our watersheds clean and free of pollution and plastics. So I just wanted to thank you for joining us on this today's edition of Capital Connection on Facebook Live. We will begin to do more Facebook Live sessions as we move along. This really is an opportunity to engage you and the public in the topics that are most important to you. So I would encourage you to leave notes and comments about things that you would like to see in future editions of Capital Connection. I want to just thank all of you for spending time with me here in the governor's office, and I look forward to the next opportunity for Capital Connection on Facebook Live. Mahalo.